Liverpool anyway from 5 o'clock on the Friday, so yeah, take no distance being from 8 o'clock in the morning.
This is the Royal Albert Dock, and it was built in 1846, and it was designed by Jesse Hartley and Philip Hardwick, and it was the first structure in the world to use cast iron. Before that, structures were made out of stone and wood, and that was it. And this was the first one that used cast iron to support the stonework. It also featured the world's first hydraulic cranes that we used to get all the goods off the ships here. Viewers of a certain age may remember it from the TV show This Morning with Richard and Judy. It was the filming location, and in the middle of the dock was a giant map of the British Isles, where now disgraced weatherman Fred Talbot used to give us the daily forecast. Filming started in the dock in 1988, after all the renovation work was finished. In the same year, they opened up the Tate Art Gallery. Now it's home to many restaurants and bars. The Beatles Museum, they're from Liverpool, you know. The Maritime Museum, which if you're interested in the Titanic and Liverpool's dark history in the slave trade, is very interesting. The docks hold the record for the most Grade 1 listed buildings in one place. And up until a few months ago, it was a UNESCO World Heritage Site.
They told you the news. Kept so cold in the blackest tide.
This is the Royal Liver Building, and it's one of a set of buildings known as the Three Graces. That's the Liver Building, the Cunard Building, and the Port of Liverpool Building. The Liver Building features 2 liver birds on the top, which are actually cormorants. Cormorants are actually quite common in the northwest of England, in North Wales. Each one of the statues of the cormorants has a wingspan of 12 feet, that's just over 3 metres. And they stand on top of a spire, which is 98 metres from the ground. Legend has it that if the liver birds leave the liver building, Liverpool will crumble. But local legend has it that the liver bird looking out at the Mersey is named Bella, and she's looking out for all the handsome sailors coming into port. And the liver bird that's facing towards the city is Bertie, and he's looking for when the pubs are opening. The building has 13 floors, and it was opened in 1911. And it was actually the world's first concrete reinforced building ever made. And it cost £800,000 to build. Just like the Albert Dock, up until a few months ago it was a UNESCO World Heritage Site. But I'm sure Liverpool Council aren't going to turn it into a Wetherspoons just yet.
Kept so cold in the blackest tide. If only you knew. I've heard what they've said, ignored what I read, and looked to the bright side. So here's to the bad times, forgotten in good lives. I won't let you down. I'll take off my shoes and dance to the good news. Broken smiles, well, they won't turn it round. So take off your shoes and dance to the good news. Left too long in the passing time. You know what you know to be true. Dim lit scenes of a better life. Spoken in loud tones to you. Well, I've heard what they've said, ignored what I read, and looked to the bright side.
You join me here at the Basquial Bridge that crosses over the way into Stanley Dock. If you're going out to sea, you go from Stanley Dock into Collingwood Dock, into Salisbury Dock, and into the Mersey and out to the Irish Sea. Or if you're coming inland, you go through Stanley Dock to go into the Leeds-Liverpool Canal. The Basquial Bridge is flanked by two rather large warehouses. The first one was a tobacco warehouse, and it's actually the largest brick-built building that's ever been built. After they built this one, it was concrete and steel from then on out. It stands at 38 metres tall and it's 14 stories high, and it was built in 1901. Liverpool's quite famous for tobacco. It was one of the main importers. It was the port that dealt with everything that came from America, so it dealt with all the tobacco. And various brands of cigarettes were made in Liverpool. And the British Nicotine Company had their factory in Bootle. And if you go to Formby Beach just north of here, they've named a way onto the beach Tobacco Road, because the British Nicotine Company dumped all their waste tobacco there. The council believed that it would help shore up the sand dunes. But years later, the sand dunes have all blown away, and it's just revealing loads of fossilised tobacco. The building north of the Basquial Bridge is the old Stanley Dock warehouse, and it's now called the Titanic Hotel. If you're a fan of a Hollywood blockbuster, you may well have seen Stanley Dock in a few movies. It was in Captain America First Avenger, where they were pretending it was 1930s Brooklyn, but it wasn't. It was Stanley Dock in Liverpool. It was also featured in Guy Ritchie's Sherlock Holmes, in the end sequence where they're up on top of a building for some reason. I haven't watched either of those films because I have no interest in anything other than bimbling. Let's bimble.
What I read, and look to the bright side. So here's to the bad times, forgotten in good lives. I won't let you down. I'll take off my shoes and dance to the good news. Broken smiles, but they won't turn it round. So take off your shoes and dance to the good news. Take off your shoes and dance to the good news. So here's to the bad times, forgotten in good lives. I will let you down.
I'll give you a guess what it is. No, it's not where Hitler was going to keep us all after he genetically modified us to be Aryan. It's in fact a sugar silo. And it was owned by Tate and Lyle, at least up until 1981. It was built in 1957. And sugar was pumped from the dock over the road, the Huskington dock, into an overhead railway that would disperse it evenly through the silo. It could fit 100,000 tonnes of sugar in it, which apparently is a 40-day supply.
Left too long in the passing time. You know what you know to be true. Dim-lit scenes of a better life. Spoken in loud tones to you. Well, I've heard what they've said, ignored what I read, and looked to the bright side. So here's to the bad times, forgotten in good lives. I will let you down. I will let you down. I'll take off my shoes and dance to the good news. Broken smiles, but they will turn it round. Smiles, but they will turn it round. So take off your shoes and dance to the good news. Take off your shoes and dance to the good news. So here's to the bad times, forgotten in good lives. I will let you down. I will let you down. I'll take off my shoes and dance to the good news. Broken smiles, but they won't turn it round. Smiles, but they won't turn it round. So take off your shoes and dance to the good news. Take off your shoes and dance to the good news. Take off your shoes and dance to the good news.
This is Crosby Beach, and it's home to 100 cast iron statues by a man called Anthony Gormley. Anthony Gormley is famous for doing the Angel of the North and a set of sculptures called Horizon Field in the Austrian Alps, and a rather large sculpture called Exposure in the Netherlands, also called Squatting Man, because it looks like a man having a bowel movement. Mr. Gormley says each one of the statues is modelled after himself and is 6'2" tall. And the collection of 100 statues goes by the name of Another Place, which is where I think we'll go now.
Imagination is never my thing, though it's everything it seems. To imagine two is always better. To imagine you is always better.